You're able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. I can see it's fine. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Yeah.
Let me, so I have written one test case. So the package which I have used earlier was Jupyter API. So that was creating that problem. So I recorrected that with Jupyter Engine. So now let me install. So when you go to an editor on the project, you have multiple options. So instead of giving it command prompt, you can have this option. Or if you want to execute as command, you need to execute from your local file system with CMD command prompt. If you're using IntelliJ, you can execute the commands. In editor STS, you can't execute the commands. Like you can, but that's not like a very easy way. So I prefer to go with this Maven clean for the first step. It's run as Maven install. So if you see here, so all the plugins of that particular Maven will get executed. And in the Surefire plugin, you will see the number of tests executed. The test run was 1, failure 0, and skip. So in your test file, I was just validating whether the student is having the relevant email ID or not. So it's a very basic test case. So you can have multiple scenarios on both permutations and combinations for your method, which you're going to evaluate for creating student. And you can have the error cases. If you want to throw error, we can do that. We'll see that how to do in each sample. So this is the way you can see the number of test cases executed. And now post that your final jar would be created. So now let me see the jar version. So under target, so you can see this one, test demo 0.0.1 hyphen snapshot. So if you, so what happened now, your entire Java project is being binded into a single package as jar, which is Java archive. So now we are going to execute that. So you have an idea of executing a jar. You remember the command which we learned earlier.
Executing the jar.
Sorry?
It's a question?
Yeah, it's a,
Hello?
are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. Can you repeat the question again?
Okay, so to execute this particular executable jar, the similar way which we executed like .class files and .java files, right? So what was the command for that? How did we start with in command prompt? You remember that?
Command prompt. No, I don't remember.
Okay. So how did you execute your .java file from command prompt?
First, we compile the Java file, Java C file name.
Yeah, so Java C was your pre-keyword, right? The suffix, sorry, prefix keyword to execute your .class. Same way, to execute your jar file, we have again Java hyphen, this is a jar package. So we have to give jar and the executable name. So under target, this is your executable name. Dot jar. So if you see, it is unable to access the jar file because right now I'm executing from the main package, but your entire thing is available under your target. So you have to execute from here. I didn't have the main method. So like when you get this error under this particular build package, right? So right now I'm just executing the Maven Surefire plugin. So now let's build it as our main class. So the main class for this application is your Maven demo application. So we need to mention wherever you have your driver class to mention that the thing, how do we do is we update that in our pom.xml under this build package. So far we observed about dependencies and how we can add the dependency tags. Now this is like a place where you're going to build your entire application. So now here, how are we going to build this? Again, using the Maven plugin. So let's create our own plugin here. So we have again like from the Apache package, we have something called Maven plugins. So instead of the artifact Maven Surefire plugin, we are going to call our own package jar plugin from the same group ID. So Maven.plugins, and we'll just copy the same and rename that to jar plugin. Not sure what version I have, so we can check that.
We need to give the artifact ID.
Yeah, so the artifact is jar plugin, but we need to check the version.
Okay. Okay.
This is the one we are trying to use the artifact, this is the application from our thing. So the Maven jar plugin. So if you see the version, there are multiple versions here. So I'm using the older one, which is 2008. So I can go with 3.2.2 or maybe 3.2.0, just like at least you have 3 usages. So let me go and give the version as 3.2.0. And now in this, we have something called configuration. Okay. So what is this configuration is all about? So here we'll mention that my in the manifest. So manifest is like an information where you're telling like this is your main class and you have to start your program from that. So what we do now under this manifest, whenever you create your archive, the jar file, I wanted these informations to be taken care of. So I'm going to add the manifest. So if you see there are multiple things like manifest, manifest entries, manifest files, section and sections. Right now we're just going to go with the manifest information. And we're going to add the entire information about the Maven demo application, which is your root file. Okay. So here, if you see the main tag which we're going to use right now under this is the main class where you're going to execute your program from. So in our case, this is your package. The package is test.demo. And your class name is Maven demo application. Okay. So this is your main class. So let's execute how this is working now. So let's again clean and install. So for all these informations, like what should we do whenever we want to use something on the Maven part, you have everything documented under Apache Maven documentation. So the basic information like which plugin you're going to use, what type of configuration we want it to be used, everything would be noted in this part. So here if you see the Maven plugins, you can go here and you can see like what are the core plugins which we verified on the earlier date, the clean part, the Surefire, the deployment part, and the install method. So, and what are the different type of packaging is right now available. So as a Java application, we mostly go with jar, var, and the EAR projects. The other things we never prefer multiple times unless you have like a more of performance related projects, then only we might go for the other JLink, JModel. But other than that, the real-time applications, you mostly go with these three packages, EAR, jar, and then var. So in this part, Um, so if you see right now, your application got executed and you're able to see all your console logs. You see here?
Yeah, I can see it.
So whenever you have an issue, like you don't have the manifest or your main class is not identified by your Maven project, the first thing you need to do is you have to tell which is your main class, which is your root class in your entire application. So that can be done only from your plugin called jar plugin, because we are using the package as jar. So it is not like explicit you need to mention packaging, because since it's known for your Java application, it would be jar. But if you're working on any kind of web applications, then you can mention this packaging as jar or EAR. Since it's a default Java application, by default it is considered as jar. So this is not something mandatory for your Java applications. But if you're trying to build something like your POM things, like instead of packaging as jar, you want to package it as a POM file, then in that case, you need to explicitly mention what type of packaging you want in your application. And every time when you do this, and if you want to run, so wherever you want to expose this project, and only thing you will be passing to the higher environments is this final executable one. So only this will be carried for your environments for testing. So this is right now 6 KB and it doesn't have any kind of dependencies which you have used. So how can we open this jar file and explore how was your code after building it? So there's something called JDGUI. So this is an executable jar file which decompiles your entire jar project and tells you like how your package looks like and how is your compilation happen. So to check that, whatever you need to do is you just need to drag this entire jar and then place it in this one. So you can see there's something called meta inf got created and you see a test package. So under meta inf, you have something called manifest. In this manifest, we have given the information, the main class, which is like your demo application, which is being created by your Maven jar plugin, but under your project 1.8. And this is like the first version of your application. So these are your meta information of your entire jar. And under this, you have again something called POM properties and POM.xml. So under POM.xml, you have the same thing, whatever you have used to build your application, the entire thing is packaged here. And then this in the POM.properties, you have like where exactly the group ID and where exactly this particular project has been installed from, or you have the final version from. So this is my place where I have created. Since it is local environment, I'm able to see these properties. When you wanted to exclude these properties, you can explicitly mention that in your POM.xml and ignore all the files which are not required when you want to package it and source it to some other environment and deploy them. You can still exclude them. So if you want these informations, you can have it. Otherwise, you can just have the POM.xml with the information of group ID and artifact. And if you don't want the location information, everything, you can just ignore this entire property file from your Maven. So there are multiple ways to do that. And apart from that, this is your actual project. Okay, so this project looks have like your entire packaging which you have used. So if you have Maven demo application, this is the structure you have. And if you see the student.class, this would be the one. So if you see, like right now, you're able to see the entire object structure, like whatever you have used in your code, the same reference. But if you're working for a huge application, since this is a very small application, all your attributes, whichever you use, are still in the same naming conventions. But if you build like a whole project that is having like 100 classes or something, and if you want to deploy it to some other environment, you can never find the same variable name in your .class files. It would be changing. Okay, so it doesn't mean like your project has changed. It is like on compilation, the Java will append the instance names, or it will actually refactor your instance name. It doesn't mean your project is working. It is kind of a secure way of packaging your entire jar. And then all your .class will have the relevant programmings. So if you see here, it's 7.0D. And in my program under the util, I haven't given anything, right? If you see math.random into 7, that's it. So, but internally on your compilation, it has been taken care as 7.0D, since because the math.random returns you the double value, the internal conversion has been taken care by your Java application. So these ways, all your variables, class names, and method names, sometimes, not every time, sometimes that might be advanced. The advanced level of corrections would be taken care on your packaging. So this is the way your entire jar looks like after you deploy. So this package would be taken care, will be shipped to your artifactories, and from those artifactories will be deploying only these things. And if you are maintaining some external properties, like not within this particular jar, you have it under your command environmental variables. And if you want the same properties even in your servers, whenever you deploy, you have to give an SOP, like these are the properties I'm looking for. Make sure before deploying, these are available in the environment. If not, what happens? The application will be deployed. This entire jar will be deployed. But on runtime, when you're finding to fetch the property value, you might end up with a runtime exception. So whenever you're planning to deploy it, so make sure if you're maintaining some properties externally in your system, like not in a code base, outside your system, you have to make sure that those are getting taken care in the servers or in the cloud platform too. So are we good till here, like how the packaging is happening and how can we validate our entire packaged file?
Good.
Yeah. So now let's see what are the other ways we can go ahead under the Maven form.xml. So I just gone with the Jupyter part. So let's see how this OpenCSV works. How can we write our own parser and thing, and see how that happens. Okay. So if you want to expose this particular CSV parser and logic, and you want to use this one in your some other application. So what do we do is the similar way in the new application which you're trying to run, we instead of com.opencsv, we'll share test.demo, and the demo will be your artifact ID, and the version will be 0.0.1-snapshot. And you'll have the jar which you actually, the entire parsing logic, entire whatever you have written, we'll use it as a dependency. And in that dependency, you can just directly use your parser. So we'll see how can we do that. So the model class has what information? Student name, student ID, and email ID. Okay. So you have an idea on CSV, right? What does a CSV look like?
Comma separated files.
Okay, and any other comparison between Excel and CSV? Like, why do we prefer CSV than Excel?
CSV, we can have the delimited choice. And Excel sometimes, CSV can enclose the fields also, the codes.
Okay.
I'm not sure the exact reason why we prefer CSV over Excel. But CSV, I think, is supported by easily we can load it in databases.
Okay. So the main thing is in the comma separated file, it is more easy to read, and the parsing logic, right, compared to Excel. So if I open Excel, Let me just quickly check. So we'll see how to do the Excel parsing also, because in few cases you might need to write your own logic on Excel too. But what is a major difference is, you in this one you have to read everything cell by cell, and it is like row and column. The same thing happens in your CSV too. But since you have a separator over there, it is not complicated to parse your data. So what we do is, the first line in your CSV file, let's say ID, comma, name, comma, age. So this is your header. So all your headers would be on your first row, and there is no limitation for you in the CSV, like you should have only these many headers. It's like more of comma separated information, and the string can hold all your data. So after that, how many entries you have it, what we do is the first array operator, like let's say like 1 comma xxx comma 34, 2 comma some and 45. So if you have this would be taken as your entire array. Okay, so this you will take this as a string first, and what we do is we split this string using your separator comma operator. So what happens, the entire string would be taken care into array now. So you'll have 3 values, and all these values can be mapped under the respective headers of this, and you can insert into your Java object, or you want to write, you can use it that and then try it. So this is the way your split works. So you know how to separate your string if you have a separator, a comma or colon, whatever way you want to separate your string from. There is also something called as tokenizer class. Okay. So this is like again explicitly the same way what we do from split function, but externally, explicitly they have given you something called as tokenizer class, where it helps you to separate your entire data with comma or whatever token you want to use. You can use that and then separate your entire data and get it as an array format of data or list form of data, however you want. So there are multiple classes, okay, from Java API we can use this. And if you are not sure like why do I need to go use a tokenizer class, you can still go it as a string and then decode your entire string. So this is the way, the first thing. Now if you see the Excel part, what happens, this is an entire cell, and every time if you see this data type will not be a similar one. It could be an integer or it could be a number, or sometimes you might need to format your data also. So in CSV, it doesn't be like, it will not be taken care like you have to read it as an int, or if you have to read it as a long value, you will pass it later. But in your Excel concept, you have to consider each cell. Though you consider as a string as every cell, few data will not be taken care as an actual input. Sometimes if you have some number more than like 10 decimals, that will be exponentially converted in your Excel. Whereas in CSV, that doesn't happen. Unless you import the CSV into your Excel, it doesn't convert into your exponential format. So these things will actually trigger. The second thing is the Java is not so compatible or comfortable to parse this entire one, because you have multiple sheets, and for every sheet you have multiple rows and columns, and which are not finite one. So in that case, when you're parsing your Excel thing, it is little complicated compared to your CSV file. So that is the reason most of the time, whenever you have a scenario like to parse your data, or if you have something like in your front-end GUI application, you have something like table view data, right? Where you display all your product information or any kind of bank transactions, where you have all the information in row and column. Most of the time it would be given you as a CSV file only to the front end. So they or the files which they want to upload. If you log into any bank account, if you want to see the transactions of last 3 months, the Excel file is not something everyone will prefer. If you observe, it will be more of PDF or it will be more of a CSV file. The Excel would be the last option. You can't expect the Excel on the top priority, because the parsing logic is little complicated in your Excel thing. And the Excel is again not so compatible for each operating system. So whatever logic you write, there may again some issues. Whereas for CSV and PDF, we couldn't face such issues, because it is like some file, if you have the respective software installed, it is easy. Whereas for Excel, though you have like Excel or Excel, XL, XS, any kind of extensions, then the relevant software has to be in your place. Otherwise, though you give the downloaded file, the user might not be able to see the data of what you have given. So in that case, read and write would be a complicated for both end users. So recently, if you see most of the use cases which is happening in the industry, the Excel format is not preferable one. It will be mostly into a CSV format. But we'll explore how to write, how to pass and read the Excel file to our understanding. But basically, we'll be working closely with the CSV thing. So what happens, for example, you're going to register to an application. If you're a single user, you can have your own GUI application with all those text boxes, drop downs, and everything, all the information, where one user can give me the entire data and I can create an entry in the backend. But what if I need to create multiple transactions, multiple users? Okay, so if you see the real time for stock options, so there'll be like within a single second, there'll be multiple people opting for a stock, buying it or selling it, right? Which has to happen immediately. All the data has to be captured immediately. And sometimes there might be an interface, like an broker, who has to do all these informations as an intermediator. So what he does is he can't go to a GUI and type for everyone. It is not possible. So in that case, what he says, he gives just upload a CSV file. That's it. So he just uploads this file. Immediately in the backend, all the data has to be parsed. And then you have to immediately transform the data, whatever stocks they have opted, you have to log them, and you have to see whether we have logged it on time, or was there any delay, was the stock down or up. So was there, if there is any delay, immediately the respective user's account has to be reflected with those details. So where the parsing logic has to be very, very, very fast. I mean, in the stock purpose. If it is like something where you can still wait, if you upload and you wait for some 2 minutes also, it is fine. For some applications, then it is okay. But in some cases, it has to be very fast. So what we do, we introduce our multi-thread concept. So what we do is, whenever an upload CSV file is getting triggered from the front end, the parsing logic is common. But how do we trigger this parsing logic? We have T1, T2, T3, T4. Let's say I'm having T5, 5 threads as of now. So these 5 threads will be created. And what happens, the CSV file data would be divided into, say, like 5 entries. So how many records you have? You have 100 records. For each 5 records would be taken by each thread. And everyone will do the parsing logic, whichever you have written as per your use case. And immediately they will insert those entries into DB, if it is a use case for us. If they don't have a use case on database, but after parsing, we have some other external logic, like we wanted to check the exchange price thing, or if you wanted to check the cost, whether he has the sufficient balance to do that transaction, some kind of any criteria checks which you need to do before finalizing those entries. All those checks will be done post parsing logic. So this is your kind of orchestration logic, which we take care after doing the parsing, where you have all these information as your object or as an input, however you want to get those information as an array or as an object array or as an individual object, customized object. And once you get everything and once you validate it, you if it's a like you need to save it in the database, and then you have to acknowledge to the customer, like either through a mail notification or through an SMS, like this has been booked or not, whatever has to happen. So this is only for first 5. So if you have like 100 entries in your CSV file, we might increase these threads to those extent, and we do this entire parsing in no time, so that your user could not wait for a longer time. So this entire process would be completed within 1 second. If you don't have this multi-thread concept, what happens? Each thread would take 1 second. For 100 records, it will take 100 seconds, where the user has to wait for a 1.5 minutes for this particular user to know, okay, the transaction has been taken care. I got an acknowledgement, but he's not still sure whether the transactions are successful, whether I got as a profit or was it a loss. He never knew that unless you give the final statement. So in these cases, we might need to implement our multi-threaded concept. Okay. So where your runnable interface, you use your run method and you call your parser logic from there, and then you implement the entire orchestration within that piece of code, and then you acknowledge parallelly to the front end, like your data is being taken care, and then you finally insert into the database. Sometimes there might be an issue in our database. So after parsing, when we are trying to insert into your DB, so what happens? You maybe let's say in our T2, T1, T2, T5, let's say the T3 record and T4 record are handled for same account number. So both are same account number and they are trying to insert into DB. So on your first transaction, it was like a plus 10. Okay. On the other transaction, it was like -2. So some transaction has to be updated for same account number, but we never knew whether the broker is uploading the unique entries or it is a duplicated entries. We never knew. If we have such criteria, we have to make sure that is all taken care in your orchestration part to avoid such DB related issues. Because whenever you do this, if it's though it is a multi-threaded transaction, if suppose my T3 thread is working on and parallelly the T4 thread is also going ahead, and in this case, suppose the T3 updation is still not processed, there's some issue in DB connectivity or any kind of thing where you're actually lost your data or lost your acknowledgement, like whether that is successful or failure. But the next thread, which is actually parallelly working on, is going on and it's actually doing -2. If you have sufficient balance in your account, -2 is not a problem because later the plus 10 happens, your data is matched. But what if your data is null? There is no data in the account and suddenly you're going with -2. If it is -2, you might not go with the transaction. You return back to the user that these are not valid information. We can't do a transaction to that particular stock. So you are going to pass some kind of such information to the user. Okay, or you're going to validate them. If suppose this has happened, then this could not be failed. So there is a link between these two. So we also need to make sure whether we have any kind of dependencies on the information where the account or the user who uploads them, and all those information has to be taken care in the orchestration part, and post that only we have to insert into the database. So in this database, whenever we are trying to use it, we have to make sure we are using the synchronized block so that the data is not getting into a deadlock situation. So this is something we need to consider every time whenever we are in concept of multi-threading. So now let's see how to do that in CSV. So till now, any questions on CSV idea and what concept are we going to work on?
It's clear.
Okay. So now if I go to the open CSV, right? Let me first write. So if you see, let's go this one. CSV reader. So there is something called closable interface and iterable. You remember this iterable? Where did we come across?
Iterator.
Yeah, so there is something called iterator for our collections, and which is coming from the iterable interface. So which would be the parent for us, and post that the iterator is being used in the relevant collections, right? So this is closable is something like similar to your close method which you have used in your files. So whenever you open a file like a buffer reader or file input stream reader, after writing everything or reading everything, we close our data, where we are explicitly doing using close method, right? But in CSV reader, there's something called closable interface. Not only in CSV, you can use this in anywhere. So this is one of the feature introduced in concept of Java 7. Okay. So what happens? It closes all the resources. So this is introduced in 1.7 version of Java. So what happens? Whenever you want to close any kind of resources which are getting opened before, and you might expect that there might be an issue if those instances are not closed. And as a developer, we might sometimes forget because we focus on functionality and we forget to close those instances when you start working on it. So to ensure that this is not actually creating trouble whenever we are doing any kind of handling with our files, so what we do is we use this auto closable interface. So what is that? What this particular interface does is it actually takes care of closing all the instances which are actually opened on your initial point of time. So there is something called close method in it. This is a usual close method which you call from every object, right? From your any kind of writers or any kind of list object. If you want to clear, you use list clear. If you want to use a map, you go with map and clear. And if you want to close any kind of file IO handle relations things, then you have to go with that relevant object and do the close operator. So what happens here is, in this one, it auto closes. So how does this close work? So there is something called, so the try catch block, how does that look like this? Usual try catch block is something like this. So there will be try catch block, exception, and you have this one. This is the usual try catch block. So now this this is called as try with resources. Okay. So in this try, we open like this. And within this, we create our instance. If suppose you're creating buffer reader, you have it as buffer and the relevant reference as buffer reader. So this would be the way where you use it. And in the entire construct, the entire flow part, you have the cache block. And in the cache block also, like after cache block also, you will close that instances. So after Java 8, like after Java 8 has come and that is like predominantly used. So in that case, we never go with try with resources. But if you're still, your applications are working on Java 5 or something, and if you want to improvise it and expand to the next level of Java, then you can go with the try with resources part. Okay. Even this has been expanded in the later version of Java 9. So what do we do is here, let's say the buffer reader. We create the object here, new buffer reader, and within that you actually pass your new input stream or any kind of object, and within that you pass your new file object, and within that you have your file name, and all these informations are here. So you create your entire object within the try bracket, not like usual way, like within. So what we do earlier is we write the same piece of code within the try block, but now we are writing in the try as a parameter. So within this parameter, you have all this information, and you can use this read method. Okay. So let's say it is buffer reader. So you use the buffer reader method, and then you call the read method and write everything. And this would be the usual way. So after this, how are we going to close that? So what do we do is now, you just write the entire cache block again. Yeah, that's it. So there is nothing like you're going to close it with explicitly like close this method. There is no way for you to write that close method. This try line, right? This line will take care of that, where you're actually implementing this interface called auto closable. So whenever you call auto closable or the closable interface, internally, this particular close method will be taken care for all your IO resources. So only thing you have to do is wherever you write this piece of code, either to that method or to that class, you have to use this auto closable. So basically into that class, we use this interface. We implement this particular auto closable interface and just write a piece of code in this particular try within parameters, and then write the rest all remains same. So here what do we do after doing the entire transactions? We go read dot close. We do this additional method where this would not be required going forward. So since you are using this auto closable interface, it will take care of closing those resources. So all your memory management will be taken care of. Any questions here till on the auto closable interface? Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, fine. So now let's go back to the CSV part. So we'll try how to use this auto closable when we are trying to create our own CSV things. So now on the CSV reader, so this is again like similar to your buffer reader and writer. So however you want to read everything happens similar to your CSV, but this is something prepared, and all the possible parser logic and the methods which we wanted to use more frequently has been taken care by the platform called OpenCSV, and they has given us all the methods. So like, how do we want to read? You want to read something, just entire content, which gives you the string array, or you wanted to read one by parsing your information, or you wanted to first get the entire line from your CSV, check whether the number of information from your header and the number of information in the column, the next row, are equal, or some data is getting missed. So if you want to validate that, you have multiple methods here, like what type of data you wanted to validate. Everything we can do from your reader. So this is for your reader part. And the second thing would be the CSV writer. This is again similar to your usual one, where we read the entire data and write your entire information using usual way how you write your data, using append only. We'll be writing our entire information, and here we append all the data using our own separator which we pass. So whatever separator we want, we use that separator and append the entire information on the usual way. How you want to add your data into a string array, right? The same thing, you're going to use it. So the same structure has been used here. So these are the two things. And apart from that, there's something called bean package. So here you hear a name called bean. So far you have heard something called object. So you usually say object. And once we used model. After that, we said as Pojo. Now also we have said sometime as entity. So there are multiple names, right? Now you are hearing a one more name called as bean. So all these are nothing but everything is your object. Internally, they're nothing but your object. So what is CSV is giving us is it giving us a platform for us to convert everything from CSV to bean as actual object, and then vice versa. So for that, we have something called CSV to bean. So whenever we get a CSV, and if you have a relevant bean or a model class or any kind of Java class, basically the Pojo class, we use that and we converted everything. And there this where this entire parsing is taken care by OpenCSV. You don't need to write your parsing logic here. So they have given the strategies how you have to parse your data from CSV to the Java object. So they have implemented it, and we are just going to use those methods and map the relevant information. So, the developer's life is so easy when we use such kind of dependencies. We just need to work on the functional logic of what we are trying to achieve from that particular CSV file. Apart from that, everything would be taken care. So the CSV related parsing logic, as an application, how does it need to work as a Java programmer, everything is taken care in this particular package. We are going to use those and then use it for our own functional logic of validating the user input and how we're going to use them in our further orchestration part. So same way you have bean to CSV. Okay. Okay, maybe I think that I might be taken the latest version. I use the 4.x version. So where we have the conversion from CSV to bean and bean to CSV. And the later version, I don't see that. So I think this might have been upgraded. So now let's try to write our own reader and writer. So let's have our own text file. So we have this package, right? The source main Java, resources, test Java, and test resources. So what do we do is under main resources, you can have your package created, or you can, if you wanted to have everything under Java, even then you can create it in Java. So let's create it under resources, new other file, test demo student. So you still have this opened in your, okay. So now let's have the actual attributes which we needed to have. So since we are using student, let's go with what are the attributes I have given here. student name, student ID, email ID. Okay, so we'll have few informations for them. So we'll have this. So how do we want to read this data? So we wanted to read data line by line, and then we wanted to get the information. So we go here. So since this is a file handling, you have to have everything within your try and catch block. Okay, so all the information has to be within your try and catch block. So now within this, I have this. So we need to see how do we need to read. So to read, you need to first provide the file which has to be read, right? So there's something called, there's a file under file reader. You remember we used file reader earlier.
Remember this. We need to give the path. That's right.
Yeah, you need to give the file reader object, and you have to give the file path. Okay, and post that. Let me give this file path. As of now, let me say file f equal to file. So now let's go and create our own reader. And in the CSV reader, so we are going to use something called a method. This one, read next. Okay. So what is doing? This is actually whenever you call, it will return you the array of string data. So whatever CSV you have as part of this, it will entirely be given into an array format. And then post that we are actually reading it. Like how do you want to read? Either going forward, how we want to read the entire data structure. So basically it's like in your linked list, you have the next level. And if you see a queue, you have it as peek and pop. As a stack, you have it as a last in first structure. The same way the peek and pop structure has been used here to retrieve all your information. So the pop line is, it's basically like the first information would be taken care, and then the next information, and then the next information. So how the internal data structure works is similar to your queue. So now we'll go back to our reader, and here I'm going to use our object where I'm going to pass this file reader, and then with that purpose I'm going to read the data. So I'm going to first create the instance. So in the CSV reader, you need to pass a reader object and passing this file reader object. So this is the file which I'm going to read. And after reading, what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass it using the read next method. The same way you use your while method in your reader, we are going to use the same thing. And here this would be like CSV reader dot the read next method. Okay, so but this read next is something you need to take as an array object, right? So for that array object, you need to have a string array defined. So let's have a string array data from CSV. Okay, I'm creating it as null object. So now every time you read, I'm going to append those information into this object. Okay, and how do you check your end of file in usual way?
Not equal to -1, right?
Yeah. So here I'm not going with not equal to -1. I'm just giving it as, since it's an object. So earlier in the read function, we were getting it as an integer, right? So you need to know the end where you have to stop your reading part. So since it's an array, object, I'm going with a normal null condition. Okay. So while the data which I read is not equal to null, in that case, the data is present for me. Only then I'll actually iterate my data set. So I'm just going with a normal for each. And here the data which I'm getting is data from CSV. And everything is in string array. So I need to pass it to a string object. So let's say string data. Okay. So now you got your information and let's print it. I'll have it in a single line. So you know what information you're getting printed. Okay. So now we need to use this method to call, and here I'll just have ext start trace. So and I need to give the path. So let me go to this properties. Use this one. So, so let me call this from our main package. I don't think we need this anymore. So let me find it. Okay. So let's run this program. So you see here, student name was the first entry, student ID, and then the email ID. Now the next set of information which I have passed, and next set of information, and next set of information. Let me just remove that data so it will be easy for us to understand what it got printed. Okay. So if you see now, it is nothing like your data has been passed with your separated comma and the entire information has been appended together. There is no separation or anything. It's like everything is together. Okay. So this is the same thing you can achieve using your buffer reader also. There's no difference. The same thing you can achieve. But in this one, you have an additional what to say, built-in functions which can be reused to get the more information from your CSV. Are we good here till?
Yes, Megha.
Okay, so instead of like using this entire read next on every criteria, right? So let me just take this out. So this is like reading the entire CSV data by line. Okay, so we are reading each line on iteration. So what if we wanted to read entire data? So how are we going to read that? So there's something like read, similar to read next. There was one more method. What was that? You see here, read all.
And read next silently. What is that?
Yeah, we'll explore both things. So there is read all and read next silently. Okay. So we'll first try with read all and then we'll come to read next silently. So this is what by line, like next line. So now here you have the same thing. So I think it's better to keep everything on. Maybe we need this objects. So now we are going to use the same CSV reader. Dot read all. Let's execute this. This is something. Okay. So if you observe here, and this time your data was an object structure because you don't maintain them in your string format. You see the difference? What happened on reading your entire data?
So this read all method is returning a list, right?
Yeah, it's a list of data. So if you see, this is a representation of your list. And if you see, the entire data is getting printed in your list format. So if you wanted to have each object from that, you can, like, if unless you use it in your Java code, there is no problem. But if you're trying to print something, right, then it would be displayed as a form of list. So if you want to use your toString method and override them, you can have it. But if you read line by line, the entire thing has been converted to the relevant object type just because it's a string and you got it converted. Whereas in this, you're actually printing the entire data as a list of string array. So that is the reason you have two open array brackets to represent that list of array. So now we'll see the other one, which is your read next silently, right? So it is similar to the usual read all method where you get the entire string array. Sorry, not read all, read next. The similar read next method, right, which gives you the entire data in your string array format. The same thing, what happens is it is not taking any kind of further validations on the execution. So that is happening internally. So if you see here, the line statement, with each comma separate element is separate entry or null if there is no more input. So this is something like a kind of validation happening internally, and you don't need to take care of that explicitly after iterating every line and validating that information whether data is present or not. Such kind of information is not taken care by us. It is like internally it is taken care. Other than that, if you see the method flexible read is the same thing. The validate here is something which is actually passed as false, whereas in your read all method, you will pass both the things as true. Not read all, sorry, read next. You see the both the things, the validation part and this part, both are actually sent as true. Whereas in read silently, you're not validating it, but you are getting the entire information. That is the only difference you have, and that is the reason they have named it as silently. Like you're avoiding those validations. So are we good on this reader part? Like, can we go with the next writer thing, and then we'll try on the bean thing?
Yeah, okay.
So in the same thing, let's have something like this. CSV reader dot read all. And if you see, there are multiple options you get after doing this read all also. Like if you wanted to, the read all is something you get it as a string of array, right? And if you don't want it as a string of array, you still want it as string reader object itself. So what do we do if you want the reader? You just type parse it, right? So now if you see the methods, so like there is a way for us to read the data, not only by creating the CSV reader from your file object, but there is also something called CSV reader builder. So similarly, you have something called parser builder too. So what happens is the data which you read from your CSV, you can have multiple validations and verifications to read your entire data set, and you can actually skip. So for example, if it's not a dynamic data, like everyday entry, you're getting it from some particular bad job, okay? So you have something like a date in the first line, and the second line, you have something called of status. So there's date and status. So let's say this is a scenario. So what happens, we wanted to validate the date and status, and you have some other metadata information, which you don't need to worry about, okay? But this is something the user is giving us every time. So we have these set of information in our CSV file. So what do we do? What are the things we need to validate? The date and status are must, because we are going to use this in our program. But metadata is something which can remain in your document itself, because you're going to save this file somewhere as a backup. You wanted to have it as a information which has been provided by the user, but you don't want it to be stored or used in your entire functionality. So what we can do is, in that case, you know the ordering part. So it's a date, status, metadata. So this would be the structure. So what we do when we are trying to iterate or read your entire CSV file, we make sure that this metadata information is not parsed. That you're not spending time on that metadata. Instead, you want to skip this line. So what we do is, however you want to read your data, you can build it. The structure you wanted to build, you can build it here. And you can see there's multiple options. You want to build your object, or if you wanted to use a line validator too, or if you wanted to see a line validator, or you want to skip those lines. So everything, if you wanted to have a kind of a carriage, like a tab, like, or a next line, any kind of carriage returns, you can have them also. Like you can just pass that method. So if in that case, if you don't want, you can just give it skip lines, and how many lines you want to skip in your structure. That can also be specified. Like I just want to skip the first line. So every time I get a data in the first line, it would be like to say 24th entry list. So if this is your statement, okay, I'm just giving entry list. This is your header. So you don't want to read or parse this data. So what we can do is I can go here with the number of lines skip, I'll give 1 and then I'll build my object. Okay, I need to pass the reader. So now let me give this. So after this, you can get skipped lines. I'm just giving a count to understand what is skipped. So the data skipped is 1 and to see what data has been skipped, you will still get it as an object. So because you don't have any data right now, did I give student 1 or no? So in this file reader, I don't have any data because I skipped it. So I don't have any data to be read here. So this is a way where you are actually skipped your information. You don't have any data to be read. So these are the ways you can actually use, and there are multiple methods in CSV reader. So based on your situation, you can explore it from your builder and you can use it. So now let's go for the CSV writer. So now let's go here. So we'll wind up this one with the writer and then we'll be into CSV. Is it okay for you for another 5 minutes, Kilma?
Yeah, okay, so now we can complete it.
So we have something called CSV parser. Okay. So what this parser does? So I can even build my own, like similar to reader, you have again a parser builder. So you can use that parser builder. And then how do you want to parse your data with your which operator? If you want to parse your data with comma. So if I have in CSV like comma, I need to parse it with comma. So I'll do it like how did you use the skip lines? You have something called separator. And within the separator, since it's a character, you have to give within single quotes and my character is comma. And with that, I'll build my object. So I have my parser handy. So with this parser, we are going to parse our entire data set. So what are we doing is, instead of reading the entire data, we are passing it with this comma operator. So this is similar to your reader only. I'm not going into the writer yet. So what we're going to do is here. You see here with CSV parser. So where you can give your own parser, how you want to parse your entire data, and then you can actually get the entire information, like basically the build method, which works here. I need to give my parser. Okay, and post that. You can use your normal iteration. How did you use here? Yeah. So for example, if your CSV has multiple parsers, like instead of comma, you are maintaining it with a colon, like any kind of structure for your own CSV file, you can give the respective thing and then use that as your parser indicator to parse your entire logic. So if you see here right now, the data has been parsed, and which is similar to your above one, which you used as read next. So if you are like, if you have multiple ways to read your data, I prefer you to go with this parser logic, because when you create your customized CSV and different structure of template to read your data, it's always better to use the parser rather than reading it directly from the using read all method or read next method. It's always better to have your own parser logic and then read from it. So let's go with the right one. So do I need to create an object, or I can just go ahead?
I need to create an object.
Okay, how can I create an object?
Right, from the new.
Sorry?
New CSV, right?
Okay, like how I need to write and writer object, right? So what type
And
of
we need
writer
to
can
give
I?
the path and file name, right?
Sorry, I missed your voice. Can you come again?
Yeah, we need to give the path and file name, right?
Yeah, yeah. So how do you give that? Usually in your buffer writer or file writer, how do you create it?
So file writer.
File writer, okay.
Yeah, file writer.
Mhm.
New file writer.
I'll use the same file.
Can we use a different file? It will
Different file?
override, right? If we
Yeah.
same file.
Let's create a different file. Okay. So why is it throwing that error?
I think we need to pass the
Hmm?
output stream. I think we need to pass output stream only.
You should have it in try block, right?
Okay, okay.
Okay. So now you have your CSV writer object ready. So we are going to write something into it. So to write something, we need two sections in a CSV file. The one is your header part and other one is your data part. So first let's create our header part, like what type of information we want, and everything is an array object. So everything is taken as a string array. So let's take this as string headers equal to, and what are the headers you want as part of the CSV file? You can name few.
You're going to write the same kind of data, right?
Yeah,
However,
anything. You can give any headers, whatever you want, because it's not a same file, right? It's a different file. So you can give me any kind of headers you want. Let's take a bank name,
account number,
account number.
IFSC code,
Sorry,
IFSC code,
IFSC code. Okay.
or mobile number.
So mobile number. I'm just giving these as my headers. And I need to add these into the data, like into the file. So which object should I use? Should I use with CSV writer or should I go with file writer? So since we are working on CSV writer, I'm using the CSV writer object. And which one do I need to use here?
So write all.
So since we are taking only one object at a time, right? I can't go with this write all because I'm not appending everything right now. So I
The
can't
right
go with
next.
anything. So what should I use? I go with the right next
Right
has
next.
apply codes to all or not. So I'm just going with this and I'm going to give my headers. So what is this apply codes to all? So if I give apply codes to all, and then it is again initializing a string size and then it's building the entire data. So I'm just going to give apply codes to all and see how the data is getting inserted in my CSV file. I'm just giving it as a flat true. Okay. So now my data has been inserted only for my headers part. No data has been inserted. So let's try by creating our try catch with resources here. And let's implement our class with auto person. Okay, let me just have this in single line. Okay, okay, I'm using 1.8 version. Got it. I wanted to show this example, but I couldn't because of my system. Maybe we'll try in another program. The try catch resources. Since I have JDK 1.8, it's not compatible here to use it. So now let's call this write CSV data from our and let's execute our program and see whether these are getting written in our headers. Open the file. It got created, but data is not accepted. So let's try one more and see. It's reloading, but nothing is written. Fine. Let me figure it out, Kiruba. The data is actually coming. It's not getting written in the file alone. So I can check on this. Apart from that, you have any questions on the CSV reader writer?
Okay, fine.
Apart
Yeah,
from
apart from this, okay. I'll check this tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. I'll actually check because we are able to get the data on a record. The only thing is on file, it's getting not created. So I can check that and we'll continue again on tomorrow on this and then we'll see on multi-threading concept of CSV in the same. So yeah, like apart from that, you have any questions on Maven or Collective on Java or Threads? Do you have any queries?
Till now, no, Sneha.
Okay.
All okay.
Okay. So have your Spring Toolsuit installed tomorrow. So parallelly, when we are doing CSV, you can try for Excel also.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry for the late.
Thank you. Have a good day. No problem. Thank you.